And you did say, Governor, at that August debate when the question was put to the entire panel, if Donald Trump is convicted, will you still, and he is the nominee, would you still support him? And you raised your hand. You're a lawyer. You've served in the Navy. You were well trained at the greatest schools. Do you really believe that a man who's convicted of, say, attempting to overturn the 2020 election or taking nuclear secrets back to his beach club, do you actually still, as we sit here today, believe that person should be president?
So I signed a pledge, Willie, and that pledge is what it is. Now, do I think somebody under those circumstances could get elected president? The answer is no. That will not happen. I think that Republican voters will understand that as we get closer to voting. But it would be fatal in a general election. And I don't think the party should nominate in that situation. However, I signed the pledge. I'm a Republican. I don't think it's going to come to that, and I think we'll get the job done like we need to. But the reality is I signed it, and that's what I did.
So you stand by that this morning?
Yeah, when I signed the pledge, I knew you never know what's going to happen. It's a crazy process. People make different decisions, and I think my point of view on it was, I'm participating in this process. I've got the plan to win. We're going to win. At the same time, it's like you can't just take your ball and go home. You can't, on the one side of your mouth, say the country's in decline, Biden's failing, and on the other hand, say, I'm just going to pout if things don't go my way. So that was kind of my rationale for doing it.
Oh, just stop. Just stop. I mean, how do you spell desperation, right? I think it's spelled DESANTIS. I mean, that was just so beyond cringeworthy. Needless to say, it's over, gang. More and more donors and Republican establishment hacks and pundits are all admitting Trump's victory is inevitable. I mean, if you want confirmation of that, just look at what's happening at his nearest competition, Ron DeSantis, right? Ron, foot fetish DeSantis, sabotaged by his own bootgate. He's absolutely imploding. I mean, it's sad, really, right? I mean that. I think we would all agree with that. I mean, he had such a promising future. It would have been, DeSantis 2028 would have been inevitable. It's just sad. I mean, we could all agree. I think in the end, he decided to listen to Republican establishment snakes, the dying Karl Rove wing of the party, and they made him believe, together made him believe that they could take Trump out. But alas, if ever there were a major political miscalculation, it is the Ron DeSantis presidential campaign, or what's left of it. Greetings, everyone. It is I, Dr. Steve. It is Live Stream Friday. I am your host, your Patriot Professor, here to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. If you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. We are live on both YouTube and Rumble. Super chats and super stickers are up. Send me your questions. I will answer them in due course. We're going to see the latest. I mean, you're going to love this live stream. I mean, we're just going to sit back and savor the latest on the one and only Donald Trump absolutely running away with this nomination. I mean, we're talking pundits, donors, the establishment. They're all now using the term inevitable. That's the word that keeps popping up when it comes to Trump's nomination. We're going to see the latest on that, and we're going to see why the efforts by donors and Democrats alike to take Trump out have so miserably failed. All that and more on this live stream Friday. Again, super chats and super stickers are up. Send me your questions. And before we do anything else, gang, you do need to click on that link below and visit the amazing Patriots over at Goldco. With everything going on right now, from wars breaking out around the world to the advent of central bank digital currencies, the radical instability and unpredictability that surrounds us requires that we become very smart with our money. We never know what's really going to happen, often until it's too late. And so that's why I've partnered with the amazing company Goldco, because I know that the Patriots there are ready to help you and guide you at a time like this. So go ahead and click on that link below right now and get your very own gold and silver kit absolutely free. That's right. This gold and silver kit shows you how to get into precious metals tax-free and penalty free, even if your money's still in a retirement account like an IRA or 401k. And get this, you may already qualify to get up to $10,000 in free silver. I told you they're patriots just like us, and they're here to help. Now, you've seen the writing on the wall, so don't wait until it's too late. Defend your freedom now by clicking on that link below and get your free gold and silver kit today. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. More and more donors and pundits in the establishment class are admitting, some of them through clenched teeth, that Donald J. Trump is, in their words, quote, inevitable. He is going to win the GOP primary hands down in a total and complete wipeout in every single state, most especially in Ron DeSantis' own state of Florida. Now, right now, Donald Trump has raised $45.5 million in donations just from the third quarter alone in 2023. He holds $36 million in cash for the GOP primary election, or what's left of it. And he's leading in all of the polls by double digits in every single primary state. And the endorsements continue to just rack up for number 45. Senator Rick Scott, you may have seen this. Senator Rick Scott of Florida, yes, Florida, in a devastating dismissal of his own governor, has officially endorsed President Trump. He's officially endorsed Trump, and that's huge because it's not only repudiation, as it were, of DeSantis, suggesting that the Republican establishment has more or less completely lost any confidence whatsoever in DeSantis' candidacy. But more than that, Scott, as I understand it, generally doesn't endorse. He tries to keep above the fray, as it were, and stay out of the endorsing game, but not this time. He broke his characteristic silence and has come out 100% pro-Trump on the MAGA Express. So that was a huge endorsement yesterday. Trump, of course, continues to surge in the polls. According to the 538 polling average, he has a near 50-point lead over the pack. Again, this is a dominance, a primary dominance we've simply never seen before. The latest American Pulse poll has Trump up over Biden by 2, 44 to 42. The latest Harris X poll also has him up by 2, 51 to 49. And the latest YouGov poll has them both tied at 42 apiece. Again, the way to understand these polls is that Trump never, not at any point, never did Trump ever lead, or was he ever tied with either Clinton or Biden in 2016 and 2020 in any of these polls. Right now, as we speak, these polls show that Trump is in the strongest position he has ever been in. And keep in mind, he not only won 2016 with more than 300 electoral votes, more than any of the Republican 30 years, but then he in turn got more votes than any incumbent in history in 2020, because of course that was such a pristine election, as we now know from Bridgeport, Connecticut. And he's now in a stronger position than ever, than either of those two monumental elections. Now, for some odd reason, a number of donors who, as Rich Barris of the People's Pundit never tires of reminding us, are horrific political forecasters, right? The members of the Republican donor class are basically politically illiterate. They're political idiots. And they actually believed that they could sever MAGA voters, America First deplorables, away from Trump by giving them a supposed viable alternative, namely Ron DeSantis. Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire, you might recall early on in the get-go here, they played along with that big time. And the assumption here was twofold. One, they believed that the indictments, as they piled up, as you just heard, convictions coming in, they believe would inevitably hurt Trump in the polls. All of this weaponized legalism would inevitably damage Trump's political viability. That was the first, assumption or prediction. The second was that Trump's base is the same as the Republican base. Trump's base is the same as the Republican Party's base. In other words, you could simply replace Trump with a viable Republican alternative in every region that Trump performs well in, every voter demographic that Trump performs well in. That will translate automatically to the Republican alternative performing just as well. So if Trump is winning Ohio by 10 points over Biden, well, then DeSantis will win Ohio by 10 points. Some, like if you listen to National Review, they'll think he'll win by 12 points or 15 points. If Trump is winning the Rust Belt, then an alternative Republican like DeSantis will win the Rust Belt as well, right? These are the twofold assumptions. As it turns out, both of these assumptions are dead wrong. They completely missed the mark. We now know that with every indictment, with every mugshot, every kangaroo court, the more popular Trump gets. With every indictment, with every mugshot, with every kangaroo court, the more popular Trump gets. They're having the absolute opposite effect. They're having the opposite effect that these donor class idiots, along with the Democrats, notice they're teaming up here to take Trump out. They're having the absolute opposite effect that both donors and Democrats predicted. The more they persecute, the more popular Trump gets. The more they persecute, the more popular he gets. And again, we have the data that's suggested for why that's the case. Trafalgar polling found relatively recently that 79% of Americans, 8 in 10, believe that we live in a two-tier justice system that protects the establishment at the expense of average citizens. Comparably, the most recent Harvard-Harris poll found that 55% of the population believes that the federal indictment against President Trump is politically motivated. 56% believe that it's deliberate interference in the 2024 election by Biden's Justice Department. And so, to these donors and Democrats' horror, a supermajority of voters appears to be emerging that's ready to push back against this weaponized legalism and restore the rule of law. Ultimately, this may be why Trump is so obviously crushing it here. More and more voters are galvanizing around Trump because they see him as the object of this weaponized system that they previously recognized exists before it was so overtly weaponized against him. And it's not just traditional Republicans that are doing this. This is so key to the second assumption that was so wrong. It's not just traditional Republicans. The Washington Post, we've talked about this before, they came out and admitted very recently that Trump is seeing levels of minority support no Republican has reached in half a century. And they found this across 5 high-quality polls where in a single month, where Trump was averaging an astonishing 20% support among Black voters and an unprecedented 42% support among Latino voters. So again, make sure you get what they did there. The methodology is so fascinating. They're cross-referencing a number of different polls taken over a 30-day period from different outlets, right? Different polling agencies using different methods, different weighting systems and the like. And yet, when you average all these 5 polls together, Trump comes out with a minority voter support Republicans haven't seen in half a century. That doesn't translate. That doesn't just throw in another Republican there. And so it doesn't translate, obviously. And it's largely due to the backlash against the very weaponized legalism that you just saw DeSantis participating in. That mugshot, that freaking awesome, glorious, magnificent mugshot is the GOAT, man. It's the greatest of all time because it made Trump officially gangsta, right? We've talked about this. He's now one of us. Voters who have consistently voted Democrat are now voting Trump almost solely on that image because it made him one of them. And it's funny, I owe this observation to Robert Barnes. I think it's brilliant. If you ask people, particularly working class, non-white working class voters, how many New York billionaires do you know? How many former presidents do you know? Well, of course, the answer is zero. How many do we know, right? But if you ask them, how many people do you know who've been victims of the system? How many people do you know have had mugshots taken, but who were innocent, right? Well, that's different. They may know several at some point in their lives who got arrested, oftentimes unfairly. So, in other words, that mugshot transferred Trump from one cultural sphere, one cultural space, the New York billionaire former president, into another cultural space, someone legally persecuted by an unfair and unjust system. And that transference, that cultural transference, has endeared Trump to voters who would never perhaps even considered voting for him prior to it. So this weaponized legalism and all the indictments and court appearances and mugshots and potential convictions has, contrary to what the donors and Democrats predicted, they've completely resulted in more and more people rallying around Trump rather than rejecting him. This is what DeSantis doesn't get, right? People are rallying around Trump as a result of this weaponized lawfare rather than rejecting him. So that's the first huge miscalculation that they made. But the second miscalculation, in my view, I got to tell you, is even worse. Wait until you see this. But first, gang, every one of you needs to click on that link below and learn how to stick it to the establishment by using their own corruption against them. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Companies like BlackRock have been bribing corrupt politicians like Nancy Pelosi with insider trading secrets for decades now. They know a whole host of trading secrets that gives them an unfair advantage when picking stocks. But did you know that thanks to a little known SEC database, well, guess what, gang? We can have access to those very secrets as well. We get to see what stocks these corporate CEOs are buying up in real time, and then we get to piggyback on their trades to gain the same advantage for ourselves that Pelosi and the crooks in D.C. have. My good friend Ross Givens, he's been tracking insider trading for years now, and his recommendations have led to investment returns of over 200%. Some have hit as high as nearly 1,500%, and now it's your turn. Click on that link below right now and learn how you too can learn to trade like Pelosi. Click on that link and learn how to gain an insider advantage for yourself today. All right, so the second miscalculation here is even, I think, more significant than the first. And this is where a huge shout out has to go to my number one favorite pollster out there, and that is Rich Barris of the People's Pundit. You guys know, if you follow this channel, he's been on this channel numerous times because he's done more work on this precise issue than anyone else that I know. Rich has more than anyone else compiled the data and is absolutely spot on in his analysis on this very particular point. Bottom line, Trump's base is not the Republicans' base. You've got to get that. Trump's base is not the Republicans' base. This is what Shapiro and others completely overlook. And I think in some ways we found out the hard way that this is the case back in 2022 in the midterms, in the midst of McConnell, McCarthy sabotaging so many MAGA candidates across the country and then blaming them for our loss. They're so odious. Trump's base is not the Republicans' base. Just because Trump wins a county doesn't mean a Republican is going to win it. Again, that's so huge. That's perhaps the single biggest miscalculation among people like Ben Shapiro and these idiot donors. They assumed that Trump's vote would easily transfer over to the Republican candidate if they could but take Trump out via the indictments, by the way. Again, the bizarre irony in all of this. It's not even bizarre. It's so flipping stupid. The DeSantis campaign is actively and openly rooting for not just indictments, but convictions. As we saw in that cringeworthy MSNBC interview. And why is he on MSNBC? Who's watching MSNBC but far left frothing freaks? So he's there on Morning Joe, and he has this cringeworthy interview where it's patently obvious he wants the indictments and the convictions to work against Trump in his own favor, DeSantis' own favor. So this is the insane irony with the pro-DeSantis crowd. They think they can plausibly put forward DeSantis as the anti-establishment candidate when he so blatantly sides with the very establishment that's weaponized the legal system against Trump and the MAGA movement. A weaponization that 8 out of 10 voters are repulsed by. I just want to go in the corner and suck my thumb. I mean, this is crazy. How on earth do these people pass themselves off as smart? How on earth can DeSantis plausibly be anti-establishment when he so overtly and explicitly roots for the establishment's efforts against Trump? I'm sorry. I just don't get it. It's like, why do I even have to make a video like this? Why? It should be so obvious. It's just so bizarre how people of this political and intellectual illiteracy just get so far in life. I don't understand it. But all right, regardless. As Rich has conclusively shown, this election, 2024, comes down to the Rust Belt states. Well, I don't know. Virginia may be in play. We'll have to see what happens next Tuesday. We'll see. But I mean, forget Colorado, right? Forget Bucks, Colorado. Forget California. Forget Minnesota. Forget Washington. Forget Oregon. Forget New England. Forget these states, okay? Blue states are going blue. Red states are going red. This election comes down to Rust Belt counties and Rust Belt states, the working class states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Iowa, Georgia. And only one candidate, only one, is crushing it with the working class. I will qualify that. Right now, RFK does seem to be siphoning some votes out there. That is concerning at this point, but we'll see if how long he can sustain that, especially given his far left record. But regardless, so one candidate stands tall among all others that is absolutely crushing it with the working class, both white and non-white working class. And that, of course, is the one and only Donald J. Trump. He is the working class candidate. No one else, including Biden, even comes close. No one else. DeSantis, not Pence, not Christie, not Pence is out. I don't even have to worry about him no more. Not Christie, not worry about him, right? Not Nikki Haley. No one other than Trump. I mean, look at this. This is the latest from Ohio. This is exactly what Rich is talking about. This is a state that Trump won twice. He won it twice by 10 points. He stomped Hillary and he stomped Biden in Ohio. Look at this. Biden is beating DeSantis in Ohio. I'm going to say that again. Just for any of you who are still smitten by this DeSantis virus. Okay. Ohio, a state that Trump won twice by 10 points. state that has a Republican trifecta, where both House and state legislatures and the governor are all Republican. If I recall, actually, Ohio has a Republican supermajority in their legislature. Yeah, that state right now, if DeSantis is the nominee, is going blue. Same with Iowa. Trump's base is not the Republicans' base. You've got to get that. It is a wholly unique, sui generis base to him. Now, it can be the Republican base. This is, again, what Rich is crying from the wilderness here. A number of others as well, Barnes and so forth. They're crying from the wilderness. This base can become the Republican base. It can become, in many respects, a kind of electoral supermajority base. But the Republicans are going to have to go through a major, and I mean major, political renovation internally. They're going to have to completely turn their backs on their donor class, the rhinos, their pro-open borders, pro-war establishment if they want to, as it were, initiate Trump's base into their party, fully part of their party. And just to drive this home, to add insult to injury, you ready for this? Rich has even shown how Trump is actually surging with that one demographic that all DeSantis supporters claim was Trump's downfall. Suburban women. That's right. Trump is even surging with suburban women. And the latest jobs report, that disaster that came out today, is only going to exacerbate that. Well, I shouldn't say exacerbate. It's only going to make it worse. It'll make it worse for Biden. It's only going to increase Trump's support, given that we have recession fears looming. And you'll note again, among non-white suburban women in that chart, Trump's support is even stronger. And again, just to underscore how dominant Trump is here, Rich has shown that Trump's lead only grows when he's matched head-to-head with any single Republican candidate, right? So you've heard people say over and over again, oh, well, if just everybody else would drop. I was just reading an article yesterday talking about this. If only all the other candidates would drop out and consolidate around DeSantis, because he's the most viable candidate other than Trump, then it's going to be a 50-50 or 45-45 with 10 undecided, something like that. Then it's going to be a real contest. No, it's not. We have no data on that at all, to my knowledge. None. Zippo. Whenever everybody drops out and then there's only one candidate left, Trump's lead grows. Because not everybody goes behind DeSantis. Not everybody goes, well, why would they necessarily, if you think it through? They have a choice between Trump and all these other candidates, and they choose one of these. I'm sorry. They have a choice between all of these candidates. They go with one, and it's not DeSantis. They go with Haley, or they went with Pence, or they go with Christie, or whoever, right? Or Vivek. It's one of them, right? They're going with one of them. Okay, bow out. Since it's not Trump, you must be anti-Trump. No, maybe I'm just like, I'm kind of tired of mean tweets and, I don't know if he can win or whatnot. But if I'm not with Haley, I'm going Trump. I wasn't with DeSantis originally. I went with somebody else. So why would I automatically go to DeSantis? Just because you're not currently supporting Trump in the Republican primaries doesn't mean you're anti-Trump. Again, it's these ridiculous assumptions. Look, hopefully this is the last video I have to make on this, but I doubt it because stupidity looms large. This primary, gang, is over. And it is over. Anyone who pretends otherwise is lying to you. It is over. And it's over because of the total incoherence of any viable political strategy for any other candidate. Only Trump has a thoroughly coherent political path to total dominance in 2024. All these other guys are just, they can't do it. Vivek is the closest, but again, Vivek's kind of untried. People are not quite sure about him based on some past statements he's made. But when all is said and done, this all of these other Republicans have been trying to run as an anti-establishment candidate, all the while being backed openly by the establishment. It's a completely incoherent political strategy, and it's only backfiring among the rank and file voters. Jack Posobiec, I remember during, I think it was the first debate, he foregrounded precisely this incoherence when he tweeted out about the debates there. Weird how Biden is jailing the leader of the Republican Party and Democrat judges are dissolving his businesses, and no one at the GOP primary debate seems to have noticed. Oh, but sure, they'll totally take on the deep state. Yeah, bullseye. Bullseye. We're all up here on stage having this stupid debate about policy issues and blah, blah, blah. And, oh, but when you said this, did you really mean that? Because then that's what you said, but did you mean this? And blah, blah, blah. And oh, what did you say to him who said this about you? And all this nonsense, all this middle school nonsense, all the while completely and willfully ignoring the total weaponization of our political and legal system against a former president, the de facto leader of the party. And they're all just going to stand up there and dutifully pretend that's not happening, and then claim they're the ones who are going to stare down DC. It's so pathetic. They're so obviously controlled by their donors, our donor class, like the Club for Growth, which is 100% behind this weaponization. And remember, none of this is happening. None of this is happening apart from the Republicans allowing it to happen. This weaponization could be shut down immediately the moment Republicans responded in kind, but they're not. They're not. And again, as I've heard it put, it's because they're cowards, it's because they're stupid, it's because they're corrupt. Obviously, none of this is working, and nor should it. Trump is surging, and these incoherent simpletons are all imploding, most especially Bootgate DeSantis. Is it any wonder that 76% of the Republican voters, you heard that number right, 76%, want an end to these pathetic kabuki theater GOP debates, and instead just have the entire party rally around Trump and crush Biden and the deep state Democrats in 2024. 76%. That's, if you think it through, that's really Trump's support right now. Now, again, he's getting, around that 50% support in the primaries because some voters prefer Vivek. Some voters prefer DeSantis. Some voters prefer Nikki Haley. Why, I have no idea. But when all is said and done, they would just prefer, 76% of them would just prefer, let's just go with Trump. And when all is said and done, so we may end up seeing all of their support evaporate. And eventually we're going to see nearly 80% of the party just completely rally around Trump and begin to take Biden on in 2024. Trump's dominance is absolutely uncontested. Let's do this, gang. Again, no time to be complacent. I know that. No time to be complacent. But let's do this. Trump has never been stronger than, I've literally never been stronger in the polls. He's never been better positioned to win in an absolute blowout. Let's make it happen in 2024. Over to you guys. But first,
I'll be back.
That's right, gang. He is back. It's time to show our support and celebrate the great return by clicking on that link below and getting your very own Trumpinator 2024 bobblehead in preparation for Donald Trump's glorious reascendance to the United States presidency. This collectible bobblehead from Proud Patriots is made with the highest quality material and really is a must-have for any Trump fan who wants to send some energy towards what's shaping up to be the most glorious political comeback in history. Now, don't wait. There's just a limited number of these collectibles, and you don't want to be caught paying way more later on eBay from someone who bought one now. So whatever you do, don't wait. Click on that link below right now and show your support for Trump 2024 today. Where's mine? There's my bobblehead. Come here. And again, I tell you guys, just I get it just for the box. I love the box. It's a great display. All right, I'm putting my bobblehead right here. I'm getting a swift, nice slurp of coffee. Lawrence, take it away. What questions we have? All right. Madero has unleashed a tiger. Now let us see if he can control it. Porfirio Diaz, he could not. Neither could the Democrats who unleashed BLM, interestingly enough. Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure if you're referring to the way BLM is basically breaking up the Democratic Party right now. We've been talking about the fallout from the Hamas-Israeli war, and the polls have come out, and the majority of Democrats support the Palestine cause, but BLM has thoroughly aligned itself, not just with Palestine, but with Hamas. And this is causing a massive, massive rift in the Democratic Party. We talked about it in the video yesterday. We've actually talked about it in several videos. And it's so bad we may see the Democrat Party split for an entire generation, because younger voters are very much pro-Palestine as over and against Israel. And then that's causing the Democrat liberal establishment, not the progressive establishment, the liberal establishment, to absolutely flip out. And there's no middle ground here. That's the thing. There seems to be real hatred and animosity. And it looks like their cancel culture is coming back to basically haunt them, where they're increasingly canceling each other. We're seeing that with law offices across the nation. 20 of the biggest law firms across the nation sending out letters to universities saying, you better cease and desist on all this pro-Palestinian activity going on your campuses, because we're gonna shut down funding, and we're not gonna be hiring your students. We'll be looking elsewhere. So it's very intense stuff going on today right now. Great observation, Nick. That's the same one, my friend. Maximilian, what are the various sacreds of our enemies? Oh, very good question. Maximilian's one of our top Insiders Club members. We have a live Q&A every Monday night. I would say and by sacred, the notion is, and Jordan Peterson talks about this all the time, all of our worldviews, all of our ways of making sense of the world, in order for us to do anything, in order for us to make any kind of decisions, we have to have a value hierarchy, because we're always confronted with multiple options to choose from, and we always choose something based on our own value hierarchy. And value hierarchies, if you keep climbing up and up, get less and less and less until you get to a summit, to a top, and that's what cultural anthropologists in Durkheim refer to as the sacred. And the sacred is a value that's your ultimate value. It's considered absolute and unquestionable and inviolable. And everyone's got them. Some reconfigure it more as a foundation, right? Instead of a high on the summit. Either one works. It's just a different kind of metaphor for it. Some have it as a concrete foundation. So if I go into your belief systems and I drill down, I will eventually hit bedrock. I'll hit beliefs that are unquestionable. Right? It's not, you can't change them like you would change your mind on something like, oh, it's 4 o'clock right now. Oh, actually, no, you're wrong. It's 3:30. Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. Well, Jesus Christ is Lord. No, actually, Jesus never existed. Oh, I'm sorry. My wrong. My bad. They're fundamentally different kinds of beliefs. One is a it's a belief that's easily jettisoned, but whereas the other one's a foundational belief. And what Maximilian's getting at here is, with the sacred, is what are the various sacreds of hard liberals, of the woke and so on. Let me start with I think the overall sacred, and then a sort of paradigmatic sacred, and then a syntagmatic sacred that comes out. Paradigmatically, I believe the sacred of the modern world is the notion that science is the one true way of understanding all of reality. Hegel would put it slightly differently. The Hegelian hope is that all of reality, all of what's real, can eventually be subsumed to human reason. So this is what Sam Harris is dedicated to. This is what Bill Maher is ultimately dedicated to. It is the notion that human reason, using empirical verification, the scientific method for determining reality, that is the one true ultimate way of understanding reality. It's a contradiction because there is no scientific experiment by which one can determine that. There is no scientific, there is no method by which we arrive at the idea that method is the only way we can understand reality. But regardless, that's I think the ultimate sacred that replaced religion. It pushed all the classic religions out into the periphery of life. And so they no longer have any importance. Again, you can believe them, they could be personally important, but they no longer have any kind of objective relevance whatsoever. So when you compare medieval urban planning to, say, modern urban planning, medieval urban planning, anywhere in the world always started around a sacred space, an overtly sacred space dedicated to one of the world's great religions. Whereas today, the new sacred space is dedicated to commerce, or finance, or to government, right? Municipal buildings, whatever. And traditional religious institutions, they're pushed into the periphery of importance. They're next to pizzerias and dry cleaners. They've even lost their architectural distinctiveness and the like. So the modern world, I think, is rooted in the sanctification of science when all is said and done. But the problem is that science is rooted in doubt and skepticism. And doubt and skepticism, I mean, in other words, how do I know that's true? Prove it to me. I don't have to believe it until you prove it. And by the way, that's a good way of approaching a used car salesman or, the FBI or, whatever. I mean, skepticism is a very important thing. But when it's ultimate, when it's been sanctified, now you've got a problem, because eventually that doubt and that skepticism and theorists back all the way in the 17th century, Giambattista Vico, if I recall, was writing in the 17th century. He predicted this was going to happen, that eventually, if your worldview sanctifies doubt and skepticism, eventually that doubt and skepticism is going to eat up its supposed resolution, right? Because the scientific method was supposed to dispel the doubt and skepticism, but now it doesn't. And so now today, what you've had is you have a backlash against modernity. This one size fits all way of understanding the world. And then that's ironically given rise to wokeness on the left. On the right, it's given rise to a return to nation culture, custom, and tradition. On the left, it's awakened a return to left-wing defined identities, and that's minority ethnicities. So Black Lives Matter, La Raza, race, and so forth. And then minority sexualities, minority gender in terms of its power base in the country. So women are numerically the majority, but minority in terms of power, supposedly. That's just the thing. So now that wokeness sees as the absolute sacred the victim. So now victims who come out of, build the bridge between the two. Basically, what the modern world did is it instituted a form of politics known as emancipatory politics that said, okay, now that we know what's the one true way of understanding the world, scientific rationalism, we have a duty to civilize the world by emancipating populations from their religions and their superstitions and their traditions and their knuckle-dragging customs. We have to emancipate them from that and bring them into the light of scientific rationalism. And so that's where cultural Marxism ultimately developed out of. It saw minority classes as in need of being emancipated. And then what's happened since the breakdown in modernity, what's happened now is they see the victimhood of those classes as itself now sacred, absolutely sacred. So if you violate it, if you offend anyone in a protected sacred minority class, you are now a heretic. You are bigoted, you're racist, you're sexist, you're homophobic, and the like, and you're excommunicated as a result. So there you go. That's a nice. Hopefully that helps there. Thank you, Maximilian. Raven running sticks. Good to see my friend. Disney had a tent put up in Orlando to defend democracy on Sunday for a vote check. I took great joy, more than I should have, in rolling down the car window and saying F Disney. I love it. Yeah. I mean, again, it's such projection, right? They say we're all for democracy when they really are for a liberal tyranny, just like what I explained. The moment you insult any protected class, any protected minority class, that Disney acknowledges, you're going to be automatically fired. So there's no democracy. There's no freedom of speech there. It's just, it's goofy. Thank you, Raven. Hi, Q. Good to see you. Thank you for the pound sterling. I was watching Elon Musk the other day. Democrats government are using private industry to circumvent the Constitution. What can be done? Yeah, well, that is very much what Elon Musk said he is doing. This is why he was willing to lose money on this Twitter deal, and that's what he was telling Joe Rogan, that he saw civilization at risk with noticing how the far left had basically taken over private industry, most particularly social media, and he knew he was in a position to do something about it, and he did, and he bought it out. So yeah, I mean, that's at one level. That's what we need. We need the Elon Musks and the Peter Thiels and the conservatives with the big B's, the billions, to come on in, buy up as much of the existing infrastructure, so as to kick out and fumigate any kind of left-wing, far left woke totalitarian influence, because again, they do not tolerate any dissent from their sacred. The second thing we need to do is build the parallel economy, the parallel polis. It's funny because the leader of Hezbollah spoke today, and a lot of people don't recognize, but Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, a lot of people don't recognize Hezbollah is basically a parallel society inside of Lebanon. It was built during their 15-year war. So when their social structure basically broke down. And so it's a political organization, it's a humanitarian organization, it's a military organization, it's an economic organization. So Hezbollah is basically an internal infrastructure. I've heard it put, it's a nation inside of a nation within Lebanon. It exercises enormous power, not just inside Lebanon, but in the region as well. And again, they're not even in the majority in the Lebanon parliament. So we have to build our own infrastructure. We have to build our own patriot infrastructure, our patriot parallel economy, in addition to our patriot billionaires buying up existing infrastructure. And then thirdly, do not underestimate the power of information. So when you're thinking of power, you could think of power. Well, the study of power is very fascinating, right? Dynamisology, I think, is the technical term of it. Dynamis, we get the word dynamite from it, Greek for power. But it's very interesting because you have big picture. You have two kinds of power. You have physical power, right? But then you have ideational power, or some call it informational power. So this is where Alex Jones gets into the idea of information wars. So I can physically affect you. And power, as I understand, very simply put, power is the ability to inflict an outcome on something, an intended outcome on something else, right? Even unintended, but it's to be able to move something. It's to be able to affect something in some way. That's dynamis, that's power. But I don't have to. I can physically affect something by non-physical means. So obviously, if I push you, I can physically affect you. But if we were saying back in my teaching days, if I'm up doing a lecture and you're in the classroom and you excuse yourself to use the lavatory, the loo, and you're gone. And all of a sudden I said, hey guys, high Q out there. Just I got a note from the nurse. He's got leprosy. So I just heads up. I just don't want you guys to get it. Okay. And then you come back in the room. Do you think something's going to change? Do you think something's going to change if you come back in the room? Physically, spatially around you? Of course. People are going to treat you radically different, right? When you were a kid and you were growing up, everyone's afraid that you'd be called you'd be labeled in some way that would socially ostracize you. Information, literally non-material messages that inform, that bring about a new kind of form on a person or thing or what have you, is one of the most powerful forces in the world. It's always been one of the, think about knighting. I dub thee, and then you're literally given a new name and a new identity. It's very powerful stuff. Even though physically nothing happened to you, informationally something transformed you. So getting the information out there, just like you're doing right now, HiQ, in front of tens of hundreds of thousands, millions of people, that moves mountains like we could never imagine. So I would say those three things are very powerful. We need billionaires buying up existing infrastructure. We need to be creating our own infrastructure at our own levels. And then we need to be using social media as much as possible, getting information out and informing people and helping them to see. I mean, again, when you have 8 out of 10 people saying, yeah, we live in a weaponized legal system, that's totally unfair, that advantages the rich at the expense of everyone else. That's awesome. That's good. And again, that's going to change minds, and it's going to change political affiliation decision. Excellent, IQ. CR, thank you, sir, for the super sticker. Thank you. Very, very kind of you. Vercom Precis. Do you think the GOP will have a broker convention nominate someone other than Trump? Yeah, it would be suicide. They could. I don't see it though. But it would be complete and total suicide. They would destroy themselves. And again, I think at that point you'd probably find Trump starting his own party. At that point, and say, he'd just throw the dust off his sandals at this point. He'll throw the dust off his lift inserted Ron DeSantis boots and just say we're done. And I think 75% of the party will go with him. USA 2022. Thank you for the gift, sir. If Dean Phillips or some other Democrat replaces Biden on the ballot in 2024, how will this impact President Trump's chances of victory? Well, Dean Phillips, I don't think will have any impact. No, I don't see any political viability whatsoever of a Dean Phillips. Representatives don't tend to do very well. If governors have a hard time translating their state success to the national stage, success, DeSantis or Christie or Scott Walker, how much more a representative who just has to win in a single district within that state? So I don't think we have to worry about that. We do have to talk about someone like a Gruesome Newsom or Michelle Obama. At this point, I don't think any of them can come close to Trump. Gruesome Newsom is polling even worse than Biden. And Michelle Obama's not particularly liked. She's nowhere near as popular as her husband. Again, she's kind of this Oprahized image. I guess Oprah could do it too. But remember, Trump won among white working class voters so much in 2016 and I would argue in 2020 as well. But in 2016 in particular, that even if Hillary got the same amount of black vote that Obama got in 2008, she still would have lost. It was that much of a shellacking for her. So, no, I think Trump is in an amazing position to blow this electorally out of the water. Mr. Robinson, thank you for the gift. Very kind of you, sir. Maximilian back. Who else do you recommend I ask my questions to? If you're getting, your questions are deep. If the one that obviously a Jordan Peterson. I don't know how available he is for questions anymore. A person that I am a big fan of, and I talked about him in my video on Jordan Peterson's alternative to the WEF, or his plan to destroy the WEF. He doesn't want an alternative; he wants to destroy it. Is Jonathan Pajot of the Symbolic World? He does a lot of live Q&A, and Jonathan, I think you and Jonathan would just track perfectly with each other. He's awesome. Todd, thank you for the gift. We need Trump back. Amen to that, Todd. Amen to that. I have heard they arrested several illegal immigrants at the border with IEDs. Also, I love the Trump mugshot t-shirts from your store. Thank you. Thank you, Todd. Yeah, guys, check those out. Those are absolutely awesome. Let's see. I'm with you. I mean, yeah. I mean, we reap what we sow. And what we've been sowing at that southern border, right? I mean, you guys know that, right? There are moral laws. There are moral laws of cause and effect, just like there are natural laws of cause and effect. Just like if I let go of an object, it's going to fall to the ground, or whatever your natural laws, just like that. So pride really does go before the fall. Just ask Ron DeSantis. You really do reap what you sow. I mean, these are moral laws, and we have sown quite the potential catastrophe. We have sown the seeds for unimaginable catastrophe at our southern border. I mean, there's just no way around it. And heaven help us. We don't want to be proven right there. That's for sure, Todd. So yes, we need to bring number 45 back to number 47 and start mass deportations. There's just no way around. Europe is doing it. All right, it's part of our reterritorialization. Regions are being reclaimed. It's not just simply decolonization. It's not just simply the French getting kicked out of the Sahel region in Africa. We are seeing populations expelling other populations for all kinds of reasons, because they just feel like they don't belong there. That's just the dynamic that's happening all over the world. Thank you, Todd. The Lonely Maj. MAGA is pretty much a third party that's unrecognized by the establishment. That's awesome. I've always said Trump is a third party candidate that won the major party nomination, to the horror of the establishment. Remember Paul Eddie Munster Ryan freaking out every day whenever Trump would make a comment in 2016. That's not our values. That's not. We welcome all people into our nation. We don't believe in walls and blah blah blah. So in many ways he had to run against both Hillary and the establishment Republican Party. We know they stabbed him in the back in 2020, of course. And I think the same is true of his base. I think you're absolutely right. I think there's 75% overlap. There's actually 25% of Republican base that actually wants to continue to see these idiot debates. I mean, these among these single digit midgets. I mean, it's hilarious. But yeah, it would be astonishing. And again, we have to see what's going on with RFK, because if RFK could bring populist power from the left, and then that assimilates into something similar that we saw in Italy back in 2018 between Lega on the nationalist right, the populist right, and Five Star on the populist left. It'll be fascinating. It'll be interesting. Keep in mind, I don't have a lot of confidence in the populist left. The Five Star has collapsed. They've fallen apart. Giorgia Meloni, now the brothers of Italy, who are even more conservative than Lega, Giorgia Meloni is now prime minister. I mean, the populist left collapsed. It seems like the populist sentiment just inevitably moves to the right, because when all is said and done, the populist right has been able to pivot left on the economy in order to bring in working class voters. Right, Donald Trump speaking to the striking auto workers, for example, in Michigan. They've been able to pivot left on the economy in a way that the populist left has not been able to pivot right on culture. And so they leave cultural security. They leave it unattended. And so the populist right exploits that, especially when it comes to anti-wokeness, populist left looks a little too accommodating to wokeness. People say, never mind. Let me just go all in with the populist right. So if we can bring together the MAGA wing with the RFK wing, if he's really sucking out 17, 20% of the vote, that would be an unstoppable force. It would be pretty astonishing. But we'll see. We'll see how it works out over the course of the next year. MDE, can you contrast your point of view to that of Steve Bannon and Jack Posobiec? They seem to have a theocratic vein, in my opinion. I don't know about that. That's good. I know Bannon better than Posobiec. I've studied Bannon's. I've studied his. Sorry, I'm going to move this just because my computer is going. I've studied his theology of politics, as it were. Theocratic, I don't know. I mean, again, they put to the fore the necessity of a vibrant, sacred culture in society, because the sacred is the cult that holds culture together. And you've got to get that. If you don't get that, if you don't have a vibrant traditionalist culture, then it inevitably falls victim to globalist wokeness, secular globalist wokeness. And secular globalist wokeness becomes very hedonistic and narcissistic. And it's when it spreads, you find populations become anemic. They don't stand up to the political forces that open up their borders and open up their economy so as to ship their manufacturing and industrial jobs overseas and the like, and then bring in all this kind of weird, strange contradictions, like not knowing what a woman is, but we're all for women's rights and all that sort of stuff. Or, like feminism, right? Feminism says there's no difference whatsoever between men and women, no difference between men and women. And yet men are supposedly uniquely guilty of patriarchy. Work that one out. So you've got to have a vibrant religious culture, but that doesn't mean you have mullahs. That doesn't mean you have, morality police or anything like that. As a matter of fact, America, in particular the West in general, has been very, very good in terms of a faith, Christianity, as one that maximizes individual freedom and always has. Sure, has it moved in bad ways? Of course, yes, of course. Humans never fail to disappoint, but you've got to, like we were talking about with Maximilian earlier, you've got to have a sacred. And I think both Jack, I think with Jack, I know with Steve, he believes that. Steve believes you've got to have a Judeo-Christian foundation, overt foundation in every frame of your society in order to have a flourishing society that has an innocuous, that has an immunity to secular globalism. If you want wokeness, right, go secular, because wokeness will fill the vacuum, and it will do it every time. So that's where I contrast with them is not so much on that issue per se. Where I contrast with them is I think Steve is still a too beholden to ideology, to liberty ideology. Okay, so let me make sure I tease this out well enough. I think from what I hear from Steve, he is as gung-ho against China as he is against Biden. He's as gung-ho against Iran as he is against the Democrats. And to me, that doesn't recognize the emergence of a multipolar civilizational state world. That's Cold War thinking. Cold War thinking is it's liberty versus tyranny. And I'm all in with liberty. And you have to understand, these are ideologies. These aren't theologies. Ideologies coming from the 19th century French word idéologue, or I guess idéologue. That was a deliberate attempt by Enlightenment theorists in the 19th century to find a rational system. Remember the Hegelian hope, a rational idea that was strong enough and powerful enough to replace religion as a basis not for men just to die for, but to kill for. So ideologies, you don't just die for an ideology, you kill for it too, right? And I believe in many respects in an emerging world, what I call the new conservative age, where ideology is dying. Ideology is falling apart, and we're going back to the great religions. They're not the same. Ideologies, by definition, are not just ideas. Ideologies are rational meta narratives, rational full-blown worldview that's supposed to take the place of a religion. That's the key. And what we're doing is we're going back to religion. As you just said, Steve appears a bit theocratic, and he may be in a loose, how about a theocratic libertarian sense? How's that for a nice little phrase? Whereas China's going back to Confucianism, Russia's going back to Orthodoxy, India's going back to Hinduism, Turkey is going back to Ottoman Islam, Iran is going back to Shiite Islam, Afghanistan's going back to Sunni Islam, and on and on and on and on. And Africa is going back to a Pan-African Christianity, Sub-Saharan Africa. So ideologies don't play anymore in this world. So what you now have to do is, like Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, we now need an international relations, a foreign relations rooted in the natural law of a what he calls a philosophia perennis, or what's often referred to as a philosophy perennis, a perennial philosophy, a way, a spiritual space where all the great religions come together and around the shared virtue traditions that they all have in common. I mean, you have foreign ministers talking this way. This is what's needed. Turning around saying you're tyrannical, therefore we hate you, even though we've had a very good relationship with Saudi Arabia for the last since the petrodollar, right? Funny how we're kind of selective of who's the tyrant and who's not. We just have to throw that away. We have to learn to live with other systems and other civilizations that do human life differently than we do, because they have different sacreds than we do. And that, to me, is where I think Steve falls short. Steve's still too anti-China. Not that I'm pro-China. I ain't going to live there anytime soon. But I recognize that this idea of we're the definers of liberty and you, China, need to bend the knee to our definition of liberty, those days are over. We can't do that anymore. That when I say we can't do that anymore, that has no plausibility. China just sits and laughs at us and goes, okay, yeah, right. Let's add another nation to our Belt and Road Initiative, and you guys keep playing your liberty game. So that's where I tend to get off the boat with Bannon, and I think we need to think much more in terms of a civilizational age, multipolar age, where we're going to have to learn to get along with each other based on shared virtue traditions from our various religious foundations. Rumble chat, thank you, sir. Dark Hero, thank you for the gift. Is possible for Democrats to delay the election next year due to the rising of wars and possible World War III? I'm worried that Democrats will do everything to stay in power. Well, you're absolutely right to worry about that. That's always absolutely. Yeah, they'll do anything they can. They'll do anything they can. And of course, because they know they have the legacy media behind them. So legacy media will show for anything and everything the Democrats put forward. And you're going to have establishment Republicans doing it as well. Because remember, Democrats are the establishment and Republicans are the establishment Republicans are the Praetorian Guard to protect the establishment. That's how it works. That's why whenever Republicans come into power, it looks like nothing's different. Virtually nothing's different. Because as I put it before, Democrats own DC, Republicans merely rent. They sublet. Right. So Republicans, establishment, Mitt Romney, McConnell, these guys, McCarthy, they protect the establishment and the establishment of the Democrats. Democrats are the establishment, Republicans are the Praetorian Guard that protects the establishment. So we'll have to see. I mean, if they do, hopefully, there will be such an uprising, they'll never forget it. And that will make, yeah. Well, let's just say they do that at their own peril, I think, in the end. But I don't put anything past them. Anthony McNabb, I miss Trump. I do too, Anthony. I do too. He's there. He's rocking. He's rolling. He's still there. In many ways, running what's called even CNN called a shadow government. And no, I don't mean it from a QAnon kind of thing. I mean, literally at the rank and file grassroots level, Republican politicians are taking their marching orders from Trump. I mean, he is basically controlling red state America right now in many respects, not in all, but in many. Anthony back. Help make Washington State turn red, please. Send me Bird for governor. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard now. Obviously, most of your, if you're like Oregon, the vast majority of your counties are red. But that darn Seattle, right? Just like Portland, right? I don't know the stats on Washington, but I know Portland. If Portland got rid of one county, Multnomah County, one county, the Republican would always win by an average of 10 points. It's so the Democrats have all, concentrated in these coastal cities, urban areas, cosmopolitan areas, and they've amassed tremendous amount of numbers there. And that's largely because of what's called mass society, but that society is breaking up. That's the good news. There's a deurbanization that's happening. People are leaving the cities, and suburbia and rural areas, exurbia, are growing, and they're getting redder, which is generally that's the pattern. So that might end up doing it in Washington. Otherwise, you guys can do something similar to what the Greater Idaho movement is doing in Oregon, and try to hook up with more the chimney side of Idaho, chimney end of Idaho. Todd, that's why Jenna Ellis pled guilty in the Georgia case. The statement she read in court supposed to have hurt Trump. She now works for DeSantis. Yeah, she's. I've met Jenna briefly at a Mastriano rally. I mean, I just think she got in over her head. I think she's young, and she was just very naive. And yes, I think now she's been very much a shill for DeSantis. It's just kind of sad to watch, but that's the Game of Thrones nature of politics. That's it. So what we saw there with that tear-jerking statement she read in court was something akin to somebody, crying in front of the camera, held hostage by ISIS. It was just bizarre. Charles, good to see you, my friend. Republicans last got 40% of the black vote with Eisenhower in 56. Has it been that long? The last Republican to win, it was Hoover in 1932. Harding got over 90% in 19. Well, yeah, because they were reliably Republican after Lincoln. And I think, Dinesh D'Souza basically argues it starts with FDR. That tends to go with your timeline. It starts with FDR, with the handouts, the welfare state, then gets solidified in 1960s with the welfare state. And then the black vote, particularly black women, went solidly Democrat. Yeah, it'd be great to change that. That would be wonderful. Because again, the black population, generally speaking, is a very conservative population, as are Latinos. And there's no reason for them to be voting for a bunch of woke, lunatics. Just none. Bruce Wayne, love it. Trump said he's Batman. I'm good with that. I love it. Awesome. Anthony McNabb, when can we start talking about an America recovery? More talking about building infrastructure and bringing life to deserted communities. Make America live again. I love it. Yes, absolutely. Scott Adams was talking about, Dilbert fame. He had a great tweet out. He said, "We are in a twofold. We're in the midst of something like a two-stage process. We are first and foremost now in the midst of the destruction phase, but what's to follow is the rebuilding phase, and that's when we're going to see the ingenuity of the American people flourish. I am not worried, and I'm with him. So we're doing it. I mean, you got Elon with Twitter, rebuilding Twitter. We've got the parallel economy being rebuilt or being built up each and every day anew. and we try to stay abreast on. So that's why we have the guys from Public Square on, from redballoon.work on, to give us an update. They do a lot of data-driven studies on about 500 plus companies. They're all Patriot-based and the like, and seeing what they're doing in terms of their hiring and investing and so on. So stay tuned to the channel. We'll give you plenty of that. William Mifano, thank you. Is RFK Jr. another Ross Perot? We heard Trump. Yeah. So right now it's ambiguous. There are some polls that show he really hurts Biden. There are some polls that show that he really hurts Trump. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how RFK works itself out. Now, again, RFK being independent, being populist, there's going to be some crossover with Trump. So Trump, I think, could do a lot more with RFK in terms of bringing him into the MAGA fold than Biden can by bringing him into the woke Democrat fold. That's my personal opinion. We'll have to see how it plays itself out. But right now, we don't know. Get Lost Game, thank you, sir, for the gift. Very kind of you. Titan, thank you for the gift. How come most of the establishment figures are all Jews, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan? Is there something in history that we're not told? Most of the, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if, I mean, I've heard that. I don't know, most of them are Jewish. You know, I don't know. I don't have any particular insight to that other than just I've read, you know, I mean, when you had Charles Murray doing the bell curve study that was very controversial, right, in the 1990s. If I remember, Ashkenazi Jews, East European Jews, were the highest IQ on average, highest intellectual IQ. And I think there have been studies to confirm that. So people with high IQs are going to tend to flourish in society. That it might be that it might be just the covenantal nature to it. The Jewish family remains very, very strong over the last thousands of years, and if you want to make sure not to succeed in society, make sure you implode the family, destroy the family structure. Just look at our welfare state, you'll see. So you've got to have a very, very strong family base, and the Jewish community seems to have that as well. You know, Orthodox Jews are flourishing demographically, particularly in New York. They'll probably turn New York red within the next 20 years because they're growing by such leaps and bounds in Brooklyn and Manhattan, some of their communities. We have the demographic studies on that. Interestingly enough, Israel is one of the few Western countries, if you count Israel as part of the Western values, is really the only Western country that is demographically growing through endogamy, through having children. I think they're having 3 children per every 2, so per every couple. Whereas, you know, I mean, there's some European nations that are not even having 1 child per couple. So on average, right, like 0.9 children, something like that. So, I mean, obviously, there's just a lot of factors of them socially flourishing. Lord Niblick, thank you for the gift. Hey, brother, happy Friday. Happy Friday to you, Lord Niblick. I keep seeing headlines that Trump has been officially removed from the ballot. Please shed some light of truth. God bless. I'm waiting for Jesus to call us up. Yeah, right. Our own version of beam me up, Scotty, right? No, Trump has not been removed. There's at least one trial, one in Colorado. I think there's another one going on in Minnesota to have his name removed from the ballot. Again, they're going to go through these shenanigans. I don't see anything. I think in the end, the Supreme Court steps in and rectifies that if they went so far as to do that. Also, it wouldn't stop people from writing him in. And these are happening in blue states where he's not going to win him anyway. So it's a winner take all kind of thing. So we don't have to. It's don't pay any attention to it. It's just a bunch of nonsense at this point. Denny, thank you for the gift, Denny. Very, very kind of you. Thank you, Denny. Anthony, what can be done to bring the Anglosphere closer together? And do you see it happening? Yeah, I mean, that's, like I said, I I think we've talked about this before. I mean, Churchill was into that, the history of the English speaking people. After World War II, it was a very popular idea in Britain, actually, bringing the English speaking world together into a kind of a civilizational block against the Soviet Union. Yeah, Americans back at the time could care less. We didn't want to have anything to do with it. But since then, now with the rise of the civilization state, now I think it's a conversation that's more and more coming up and will continue to come up. When you start creating more bilateral structures, bilateral organizations, when the WTO and the IMF, the World Bank become less of a factor in a multipolar world that has BRICS and SCO and the Eurasian Union and the like, I think it becomes part both economic security and military security, safety issues. That I think definitely that's something that's going to come in. But it's so early right now with that. And in the end, Britain, Australia, Canada, United States, they are very unique societies. They are different from each other. I think U.S. and Canada are going to be the closest to each other. We just, we border each other. We're watching the same shows and all that. I always feel whenever I'm talking to a Canadian patriot, I feel like I'm just talking to somebody next door. Just have to learn a bit about provincial politics and parliamentary politics and the things that are going on in Ottawa there. But we're generally, we're just so akin to each other. And it's true of British as well. But having spent a lot of time in Britain, I got my doctorate from there. It's a different place. It's a very, very different place. 1,000-year history. It just, so anyway, all of that's, I'm basically rambling, but all that's to say, yes, I do think in a civilizational world, more and more we're going to and in a bilateral treaty world, we're going to have to think more and more in Anglosphere terms. Thank you, Denny. Alex, before DeSantis announced he was running, I was thinking he would see Trump in 2024 and then DeSantis 2028. Yep. But I believe DeSantis is done now. That's my, politics is it can be very forgiving. You can reinvent yourself. Just look at Richard Nixon. Newt Gingrich almost pulled it off. He resigned back in 98 in disgrace after we lost the midterms that we should have won. And then almost made a genuine comeback in 2012. And so it can happen, it can really happen. But right now, DeSantis is just killing himself. And he is totally ingratiating himself with the MAGA base. When you get on MSNBC and you start pandering, you don't even bring up weaponized lawfare that's happening. You actually go along with it. Yeah, well, if he's convicted, it's not. Well, of course he'll be convicted in these kangaroo courts because we live in a weaponized we live in a system of weaponized lawfare that 80% of the American people are very concerned about. You here at MSNBC can pretend that 8 out of 10 people are wrong, but the perception is strong enough to recognize that you ignore that at your own political peril. And I'm not going to stand for it either. I'm going to fight on behalf of those 8 and 10 Americans. And that's why I think I should be president, so I can take on this weaponized. No, what did he do? He went right along with it. Oh, no, he read off the same script as MSNBC. He just deviated saying, well, but I'm not going to go back on my word. Yeah. I'm with you. I think he's destroyed himself. Todd, have you watched D'Souza Police State yet? I have not. And I hope to. And maybe we've had Dinesh on before. We'll have him on again. I would like to have him on again to talk about this. Excellent. Thank you for that, Todd. I'll keep an eye out for it. And that looks to be it. All right, gang. You have a wonderful and amazing weekend. rock and roll. Remember, hold on to that value hierarchy. Give hugs to your family, to your children, to your wives, to your spouses. Make sure you value the things that are to be most valued. And then what that does is that puts everything else in its rightful place. I love you, gang. God bless.